Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Investigators are learning more about the terrorist killed by Boston police. He did not act alone, and he was part of a conspiracy to target a free speech activist and then police. Gary Lane has the story.
FBI investigators now say the terrorist killed in Boston Tuesday, Usama Rahim, was a homegrown terrorist who plotted to behead Boston police officers. And they say Rahim had help from his nephew. 25-year-old David Wright was arrested and charged with conspiracy. Wright allegedly communicated with Rahim by cell phone, saying the knife his uncle had purchased for beheading the police was good for, quote, thinking with your head on your chest. Rahim had been under surveillance for 2 years, and the FBI had recorded his cell phone conversation. Rahim had originally planned to kill activist Pamela Geller, who opposed radical Islam and organized that Mohammed cartoon contest in Texas. But he soon realized Boston police would be easier targets, and that's when Rahim purchased a knife and told Wright it was, quote, good for carving. Police may be searching for a third suspect in the Boston terror plot, and the FBI counterterrorism chief says the feds are investigating hundreds of other ISIS sympathizers right here in the United States.
We are monitoring them very closely for any type of action, any type of overt steps, any mobilization factors. And when we see those, we're not taking the chance.
And it's not ISIS in the Middle East, it's those homegrown terrorists, radicalized by a highly sophisticated ISIS presence on social media that concerns the FBI and members of Congress the most.
The proliferation of jihadist propaganda online has established a new front in our battle against Islamist extremists. We are no longer hunting terrorists living in caves and who only communicate through couriers. We are facing an enemy whose messages and calls to violence are posted and promoted in real time over the internet.
Many ISIS supporters around the world use Twitter to share information, and they also use other less-known dark sites to shield their conversations and messages from the FBI and the NSA. The White House says more needs to be done to protect the American homeland.
There is an opportunity for us, in the mind of the president, to work with the tech sector on this. The threat that he's particularly worried about is sort of the lone wolf threat.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
The Islamic State is reducing the amount of water that flows into government-held areas of Iraq. Officials say the move will likely threaten irrigation systems and water treatment plants. Meanwhile, the CIA says more than 10,000 Islamic State fighters have been killed since the 9-month campaign began against the group. Officials say ISIS has up to 31,500 fighters, meaning the purported death toll from the last 9 months could represent a loss of a third of its forces. Iran's Islamic regime is continuing its brutal treatment of Christians even as the U.S. tries to finalize a nuclear deal with the country. Iranian Christian prisoner Farshid Fathi is now facing 74 lashes plus an extra year in prison after Iran rejected his appeal of those cruel punishments. Farshid has been in prison since 2010 when Iranian police arrested him during a Christmas crackdown on house churches. He was originally sentenced to 5 years in Iran's infamous Evin prison and accused of threatening national security. Iran's Islamic leaders say people who belong to house churches are extremists trying to transform Iranian society, so they're trying to crush the house church movement. About 90 Christians are now suffering for Christ in Iranian prisons. A major battle has erupted in eastern Ukraine, threatening the shaky ceasefire between Russian-backed rebels and the government of Ukraine. The fighting is taking place in western Donetsk on the edge of the main rebel stronghold. At least 15 are known dead, including civilians. This marks some of the worst violence since February. Ukraine's general staff says pro-Russian rebels deployed around 1,000 fighters, dozens of tanks, and self-propelled artillery systems in a major offensive that started before dawn. Here at home, there could soon be a 72-hour waiting period for abortions in North Carolina. The State General Assembly passed a bill Wednesday, and it is now waiting for Republican Governor Pat McCrory's signature. The bill also adds other rules for doctors and clinics that perform abortions. North Carolina would join Missouri, South Dakota, and Utah, which already have adopted waiting periods for abortions. Oklahoma's goes into effect in November. The Supreme Court could well announce this month same-sex marriage is now legal nationwide. Then what happens to all those people and places who oppose gay marriage for religious reasons, like many Christian schools? Paul Strand says many are shaking in their boots.
There's reason to believe the full weight of the federal government could come crashing down upon gay marriage opponents. It's a scary thought, but a day may be coming when institutions like Christian colleges that proclaim they only believe in one man, one woman marriage may be considered as abhorrent as racist. But what the government had to say at the Supreme Court proves that day may be coming very soon. Republican Senator Mike Lee is so concerned by what he heard in the arguments over same-sex marriage at the Supreme Court, he brought these leaders of Christian education together to warn the nation about it. During those arguments, the Obama administration's Solicitor General made a statement that has sent chills through religious institutions that support traditional marriage.
One of the questions that I thought was particularly insightful was asked by my former boss, Justice Alito.
Alito asked, in the Bob Jones case, the court held that a college was not entitled to tax-exempt status if it opposed interracial marriage or interracial dating. So would the same apply to a university or a college if it opposed same-sex marriage? The Solicitor General replied, "It's certainly going to be an issue. I don't deny that. I don't deny that, Justice Alito. It is. It is going to be an issue." And that means the government could start taking tax-exempt status from any college and possibly other nonprofit organizations that don't back same-sex marriage. The Family Research Council's Travis Weber takes that possibility very seriously.
If he's admitting this, they're considering it, if not already decided, to proceed along those lines.
Could this actually kill some Christian colleges?
I do think there's a very real possibility of it. I think the impact will be significant.
At his Union University in Tennessee, President Dub Oliver says government taking away all the federal benefits enjoyed by the college and students these days could affect about a third of the funding.
When you add all of that up, it's about $30 million a year, and our budget is $90 million. So that's a massive hit.
Weber warns government will even feel it's doing the right thing attacking these institutions.
The government wants to stigmatize them as backwards and somehow out of touch.
So Senator Lee is proposing a bill that would forbid government using its power or influence against opponents of gay marriage.
We need to draw lines around the power of government, lines that are there to protect the people from the overpowering influence of government, an overpowering influence that can, from time to time, trample on religious freedom.
It's ironic that a nation where all the first colleges were Christian, that same nation may soon drive many of today's colleges right out of business. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill.
And it's not just colleges that are concerned. Christian broadcasters fear they could lose licensing or tax-exempt status as well. The president of the National Religious Broadcasters fears that could happen if the Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage nationwide. Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar are speaking out about their oldest son's sexual abuse scandal. They spoke with Fox News' Megyn Kelly about how the situation impacted their family.
There was so much grief in our hearts. I think as parents, we felt, we're failures. You know, here we've tried to raise our kids to do what's right, to know what's right. And yet, one of our children made some really bad choices. And I think as a parent, we were devastated.
Meanwhile, Jessa Duggar opened up about being one of her brother's victims and is defending him. She says accusations that he is a child molester or pedophile are, quote, so overboard and a lie. TLC has not announced if the family show, 19 Kids and Counting, will be canceled. The death toll from the heat wave in India is now higher than 2,000, making it the 5th deadliest in the world. And in large parts of the country, there's no relief in sight from the blistering temperatures. But CBN Disaster Relief is on the scene to bring water to people who desperately need it. Dale Hurd has this story.
Temperatures near 120 degrees, coupled with a lack of rain, have caused water shortages in thousands of Indian villages and deaths from heat-related conditions, including dehydration and heat stroke. What some have called India's hottest summer since records began in the late 1800s had people across the nation doing what they could to stay hydrated and alive. Many farmers, construction workers, and the poor continued to work outdoors despite the risks. They, along with the elderly poor, are among the most vulnerable. This worker says, I have to work in the sun. I'm poor and I have children to feed at home. This street vendor says it's difficult, but what can we do? We have to work so we can take care of our children. CBN's mobile water distribution camps have brought almost 30,000 gallons of water to the hardest hit regions. And CBN India has set up medical camps in villages.
We are facing a lot of difficulties because water comes only once every 2 or 3 weeks. The water is contaminated with waste and it's not fit for drinking. We have to travel to far-off places to collect water, so we appreciate your efforts.
India should receive cooling monsoon rains this time of year, but the forecasting service AccuWeather warns the drought could continue. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Coming up, a new force is accelerating the hatred Palestinians have for Jews. See how an author goes undercover to expose this menacing threat. Coming up. President Obama is talking about the possibility of a vote on a Palestinian state at the United Nations. The president told Israel's Channel 2 that the U.S. has been against such a vote, so the Israelis and Palestinians could work things out for themselves. But he says it will be hard to keep opposing such a vote if no one believes Israelis are negotiating in good faith. The Israeli station also talked to some of the president's former advisors, one of them, David Axelrod. He said that the president once told him, "You know, I think I'm the closest thing to a Jew that has ever sat in this office. For people to say that I am anti-Israel or even worse, anti-Semitic, it hurts." So why does it seem like there can never be peace between Israel and the Palestinians? A new book blames some of the trouble on people outside the Middle East, fueling the hatred between the two. John Wagi brings us this look at the frightening influence of these European and American groups.
Antisemitism is alive and well in Europe, with attacks in France and Austria doubling since 2013. This year has been marked by attacks at a kosher supermarket in Paris and shootings of Jews in Copenhagen. The new book, Catch the Jew, has been a #1 bestseller in Israel. It claims Europeans are fanning the flames of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by exporting that anti-Semitism to the Middle East.
There is not only Jews and Arabs here, the way I thought fighting it out. There is another tribe here, and the tribe is called Europeans. Some Americans, but mostly Europeans.
Author Tuvia Tenenbaum says European governments back organizations that claim to help Palestinians, but their true goal is to create friction and chaos.
In reality, they have come to this land to implant and instill hatred in the heart of every Muslim against the Jews, and also sponsor self-hating Jews to catch the Jew doing something wrong, to declare the Jew evil, and to end the story of the Jews being here.
Behind me is an Israeli checkpoint. It marks the crossing between Israeli and Palestinian areas, and European groups send monitors here. They're hoping to catch Israeli soldiers doing something Europeans don't like. For 6 months, Tenenbaum and his wife Miriam interviewed hundreds of Israeli Jews and Arabs, Palestinians, and foreign aid workers asking about their jobs and beliefs. Paid by a German newspaper, Tenenbaum posed as a German and hid his Jewish identity. In the eyes of Palestinians and internationals alike, being German, they thought, made him a kindred spirit in the hatred of the Jews.
This is Bedouin land, we shall not be moved.
He captured many examples on video, like this Palestinian, Atef, a top researcher for the pro-Palestinian Israeli human rights group B'Tselem. The group documents alleged Israeli brutality against Palestinians. Atef says the Holocaust never happened.
Because we're Germans, we support the Jews. But ask him if he remembers that we also killed them.
It's a lie. I don't believe.
You don't believe it?
Tenenbaum challenged B'Tselem.
I want you to retract the reports that he signed on. How can you believe a guy, how can you trust a guy whose research has found that there was no Holocaust?
Another example involves Casa per la Pace Milano, House for Peace, a group backed by the European Commission. It brings young Italians here for what it calls peace education, to see firsthand the situation in Israel and Palestinian areas. Yet some of that education comes from tour guide Itamar Shapira. who describes himself as an ex-Jew and speaks against Israel. During a tour at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, he compares Israelis to Nazis.
And this one is a very known massacre that happened here in 48 that is called Bir Yassin. It used to be a Palestinian village below these houses and trees, a Palestinian village of a few thousand people, and about 170, 120, 400, again a fight of the numbers, of Palestinians were killed over there.
The museum fired Shapira as a guide, but he continues to conduct private tours. Tenenbaum's German connection also gave him access to Palestinian leaders like former security chief Jibril Rajoub, considered a Palestinian moderate. He told Tenenbaum that even Hitler didn't know how bad the Jews are.
Yeah, my question to you was, do you think the Israelis have changed?
Excuse me, let them not to change. Let them not to change. Israel will be isolated. Israel will be more than South Africa.
Hanan Ashrawi is a Christian Palestinian, yet she wouldn't talk about the existence of a Jewish temple here. Her former boss, Yasser Arafat, said the Jews never lived here.
Of course, no, the Jewish tribes were here, but they weren't, a state the way they claim it to be.
So not a state.
And I don't.
Was there
I believe there was.
Was there a temple
in Judea, Samaria, or whatever. I have no idea. I'm not an archaeologist.
Tenenbaum doesn't blame the Arabs. He lays the guilt squarely on the Europeans who pay them. Tenenbaum, whose grandfather was murdered by the Nazis, has this message for the Jews.
I don't want you to die. I don't want you to disappear. Fight back. And be brave about it.
John Wagi, CBN News, at the Adarot checkpoint near Jerusalem.
Up next, he's a top player headed to the NBA Finals, but Steph Curry also has another great love, a little daddy-daughter time. See how his actions are changing the subject to fatherhood.
Hi, everybody. Lori Johnson here, CBN's health reporter with a warning. Don't get sunburned because it really increases your risk of getting deadly skin cancer called melanoma, which I've actually dealt with personally. It's all in my Healthy Living blog, including how you can recognize possible skin cancer in yourself and others. So log on to cbnnews.com.
When Golden State takes on Cleveland in Game 1 of the NBA Finals tonight, LeBron James will lead the Cavs and Steph Curry will lead the Warriors. But it's Curry's 2-year-old who scores the most attention at post-game news conferences. And that's had some reporters turning up the heat on the young standout who champions his faith, his family, and fatherhood.
Fantastic young man.
Stephen Curry has been called one of the best pure shooters in basketball. And his skill has helped land the Golden State Warriors a spot in the NBA Finals for the first time in 40 years.
He's an unbelievable competitor, wants to win, but more important than anything is his relationship.
Earl Smith has witnessed Curry's many relationships as the longtime team chaplain. Most importantly,
to be ready for the attacks.
The point guard's willingness to share his relationship with Jesus Christ.
He is what you see. He lives it fully, and he enjoys life because he has peace with his life. He has a relationship that far exceeds a three-point shot, far exceeds accolades that are in the arena. He's a family man. He loves his wife. He loves his daughter.
That love for his 2-year-old Riley has played out in post-game press conferences.
Be quiet.
We're both supposed to help our team win.
The celebration that we had after Game 5 with my family and be as normal as possible. And obviously she's got a personality that's pretty electric and loves that scene, but there's no motive, there's just me and her hanging out.
But the Warriors MVP has taken some heat from reporters for the daddy-daughter time in front of the camera. One tweeting, "Curry's kid is cute. That doesn't mean she should have been at the presser."
That really bothered me, and the reason it bothered me is because the question keeps coming up, where are the fathers, where are the dads? And here was a guy that truly had a daughter that was loving on her dad, loving to be with her dad.
At a time when athletes routinely make headlines for abuse, Chaplain Earl Smith calls these moments,
we gotta take a week. Okay. Take a week off to get ready.
A missed opportunity.
Maybe the interview should have changed. Maybe it should have taken a different direction and talked about in a time when there's a question about athletes, a question about fathers and the relationship with their children.
Enjoying the moment.
I feel best.
You wanted to say that.
I'm gonna enjoy those times with my daughter regardless of how much pub she gets or what happens with wherever cameras are pointing our way, because that's a special time.
I think she's taking advantage of the moment for sure.
Well, game one of the NBA Finals is tonight, and Curry's post-game time could get a little more crowded soon. He and his wife are expecting their second child in July. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Before we say goodbye, a note of thanks to share on this Thankful Thursday. Today, I pray this and encourage you to do the same in those moments of struggling to find the patience to wait for something to work out. Thank you, God, that delay is not denial. It is only you working out your perfect will and timing for my life. His plans are always bigger and better, and we all know He's done it before and He will do it again and again. Well, that is going to do it now for CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. Take the time to tell us what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do that on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Make this a thankful Thursday, everybody.